So let's just start with the potency of mushrooms. Can you talk about the 1:40 ratio that we were kind of hitting earlier?
Yeah. So through the testing that we've done in the church, the church now has over 100,000 members, so we have a lot of people that we provide cannabis or mushrooms to, and the testing that we've done for the mushrooms, what we've seen is a 1:40 ratio. So some mushrooms are 40 times stronger than others. Just so we have the actual data. So the weakest mushrooms that we tested had 600 micrograms per gram. The strongest mushrooms we tested at 26,600 micrograms per gram.
Which is tremendous.
Yeah, which is a huge range.
So to just kind of put into perspective for like layman's like me, so it would take 0.1 of the strongest gram to get the same effect. You would have to take 4 grams of a weaker one, and it would be like the same kind of potency.
Yeah. So with the ratio, a 0.1 of the strongest mushrooms would be the same as 4 grams of the weakest ones.
That's
right?
a big difference.
Yeah, or put another way, like if you thought you were taking 3 grams of the weakest one, but you actually took 3 grams of the strongest one, that'd be like taking 120 grams of what you thought you were taking.
Yeah,
so
big difference.
Huge difference. Huge difference. The biggest problem is people aren't really looking at potency. What we should be talking about is how much psilocybin you're consuming. When you look at cannabis, which is the best thing we can look at for this, you wouldn't take a cannabis edible unless you knew how many milligrams of THC you're consuming. Well, the same really should be true with mushrooms. You shouldn't do mushrooms unless you know how much psilocybin you're consuming. And not to say that you can't, and not to say that there isn't a lot of tradition that people have used, and people have been doing this work for a very long time. But with the potency being where it is now, and the extremes, because people are getting better and better at growing things, you really need to understand how much psilocybin you're consuming, not just the dry weight of the mushrooms.
Can we go into the calculator a little bit more? Like, how does that work, and how do people calculate their dosage with like the different kind of mushrooms and the different spans of potency? You know, where would you tell people to start with all this?
Well, there's a traditional way of doing it when you don't have potency results, and if you aren't able to test your mushrooms, you got to test them yourself, which means taking a very small amount. So before you even take an eighth, you're going to want to take, a half a gram just to see how potent those mushrooms are.
But don't mushrooms change even in the same batch? Isn't the potency changes so much? Like how do?
It's a challenge. I mean, and that's the other part of the problem. So within the same tub, mushrooms can vary up to 100% in their own potency. So within the same batch, within the same bag, you might have some mushrooms that test at 4,000 micrograms per gram and others that test at 8,000 micrograms per gram within the same bag. And, that's why a lot of times people have said, hey, I just ate that one mushroom out of the bag and it just hit me unlike anything else. Well, that's what's going on. So if you really, without test results, want to be as accurate as possible, first you got to homogenize your mushrooms. So grind them all up together and then try a small bit of that. And depending on who grew the mushrooms, if you harvest them from a wild source, if your friends told you they were really strong, you have to take all those into account. And it's better to start with a small amount to see where they are before you do anything else. So if you don't have test results, start very small, half a gram or less. Yeah, homogenize them, so grind them all together so you know next time you try them, they'll be the same, and then kind of go from there. If you have test results, you can put that information into our calculator, and if you know there's, say, a 0.6% or 1.2%, that's an option in our calculator, and then you can put in your body weight, and it'll tell you how much to take.